To hell with the date on your birth certificate. Let's talk about what we have in common across generations. Life, sex, and tech at any age. Welcome to Age Blind with Nancy A. Shenker.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Age Blind, where we talk about sex, tech, and life across the generations. And in honor of Halloween, our theme this month is fear and scary things. So our topic today is celebrity divorce horror tales and 5 marriage trends, aka treats, that you might want to know at any age. So as many of you know, I changed the name of my podcast from The Geezer Proofer to Age Blind because I started to realize that a lot of people across the generations have common interests, common goals, common problems. So that's why we're going to talk about things that affect us all at all ages and stages throughout our lives. So my guest today is a guest who I had on The Geezer Proofer, and according to my statistics, was off the charts popular, in part because we talked about Melania Trump's prenup and hashtagged it Trump, and we got 3,000 comments, mostly trolls, within about an hour. So we're going to avoid that, but we are going to talk about something that is wildly popular, which is divorce among celebrities. So that's why we're calling it Divorce Horror Tales. And Helene is going to give her perspective on some of the issues around these splits. Now, keep in mind that this is not legal advice. If you're thinking of getting divorced, if you know somebody who's getting divorced, hire your own attorney in your own state. Helene hasn't represented these celebrities. What she's going to talk about today is just her opinion based on many, many, many years and many millions of dollars, and also on sentiment, things she's been hearing throughout the legal community. So as many of you know, our new format also has something that I love called listicles. So that just basically is a fancy way of saying a list. So I'm going to give you some facts and stats about marriage and divorce. And if you don't believe them or you want to quote them yourself, just email me at nancyaShenker@gmail.com, SHENKER@gmail.com, and I'll send you where I got these stats from. So the most interesting one, I think, is that Americans are waiting longer to get married. The average marriage age is now 30.2 for men and 28.4 for women. That's 28 years old for women. And in the 1950s, both genders, the average age was in the early 20s. So whether it's because people are getting divorced or people are just skittish or they're having trouble finding a mate, they're waiting longer to get married. The good news, I think it's good news, is that divorce rates are down just a little bit. They're down 42%. In other words, 42% of marriages end in divorce, which is still fairly high, and marriage rates themselves are about the same. And as I said earlier, last time Helene and I talked about gray divorce, which is divorce over 50, 36% of the divorces in the U.S. are now people 50 and older, which is up from 8% in 1990. Huge increase in divorce rates among older adults. And the divorce rates for people over 65 have tripled since 1990. So I think people are just realizing that if they're not happy, and they haven't been happy for 30, 40, 50 years, it's time to get the hell out. And although cheating is not a major cause of divorce, it is a cause, and 16% of married people claim to have been unfaithful, which is probably higher than that if everybody was being honest. And about 30% of those unfaithful incidents are with somebody at work. So it's a good thing that I don't work in an office and I have no plans to get remarried. The average divorce, and this is just an average across all states, is it costs about $10,000 to $20,000 in legal fees to get divorced. And alimony can be as much as 40% of earnings, but again, that varies very widely based on a number of factors. So net, the lesson learned from all of that is to think really carefully before you get married, because getting divorced could not only be emotionally draining, tough on your kids, but could cost you a shit ton of money. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking about marriage and divorce and turn things over to my expert guest, who's also a really dear friend and has counseled thousands of people who are going through splits. So welcome to Helene Brick Cabot. I really appreciate you being on the show today because I know how busy you are with your legal career and other things going on in your life. So thank you, Helene, and welcome back.
Thank you, Nancy. It's my pleasure.
So our first celebrity divorce is one that has been all over the media, the Bennifer divorce. So Ben Affleck and Jennifer, why am I drawing a blank on her name? I just know them as Jennifer.
Lopez.
So talk a little bit about what's going on there. I mean, I know there's a ton of money and a ton of property involved, and the timing was really weird. So what's your take on all of that?
Well, it seems that J-Lo filed for divorce exactly on the date of their second anniversary. And what it has been the celebrity talk is that she did that intentionally. And she did that by herself. Allegedly, she didn't even have a lawyer. So
Whoa.
she really wanted, yes, she filed the papers by herself, Nancy. So I think that she really wanted to make a point to Ben. We're not quite sure why it ended like this so suddenly. The other talk is that they didn't have a prenuptial agreement, which is shocking because it was a no prenup, right? Which, let's see, this is his second marriage, and I don't know how many it was for J-Lo, maybe her fourth, because, there's a lot of articles on her beautiful engagement rings, but she gets to keep. So they didn't have a prenup. And what a prenup is a written contract that is created by two people before they're married. And typically it lists all the property that each person owns and debts they owe. And it spells out each person's property rights during the marriage in the event that either spouse dies or they later get divorced. So what they would have done was list everything that they had. That would have been considered separate property. And then going forward, they would decide whether they would keep it for themselves, how they would split it up. And the word is, again, that they didn't do that. And this is really a problem because everything earned during their marriage would be divided 50-50 in that they're in a community property state, which is California. This includes their $70 million mansion, listed for sale in July for $68 million, and the $10 million that Ben got when he made the Dunkin' Donuts Super Bowl commercial. It includes all of the money that Jennifer made on her tours. And so, again, it's just very surprising that two extraordinarily public people and wealthy people didn't have a prenup.
Wow. And do you think I know this is not a legal issue. Do you think he's going to go back to Jennifer Garner?
I don't know. What I've read was that the thing that pushed her over the edge is that he started spending a lot of time with another woman, not Jennifer Garner. But there's all kinds of rumors that she came in and mediated and whatever, although it seems like Jennifer Garner is pretty happy with her current.
And there's also this rumor that Jennifer Lopez is on the P. Diddy tape. So who knows? Like, that's not for us. This is like watch TMZ if you want to hear the latest celebrity gossip. We're just telling you this because if you happen to have a lot of money or you think you might have a lot of money someday, you can learn from some of the celebrity gaffes and the do's and don'ts because you're talking about multiple millions of dollars that then end up in play, unless they just don't care anymore. It's like, what's another $10 million?
Very few people don't care. And again, the word on the street is that J-Lo cares a lot.
Interesting. So Rachel Zoe and Roger Berman recently announced the split.
Rachel Zoe, of course, is the celebrity stylist who has been in the business for 25 or 30 years and who's been married to Roger Berman for 26 years. And surprisingly, they also announced a split. From what the talk on the street is that here they seem to be, amicable. There's no scandal. There's no smoking gun. It's more, she called it death by 1,000 cuts, that there were just many, many problems over the last several years. And finally, they decided there were enough issues that they no longer wanted to be together. And they worked together. And so, again, their main issues were the problem with mixing professional and personal lives too much. So before you really go to work with your spouse, please consider that it could become a problem. And as Nancy mentioned, people who have affairs, 30% of them, although Nancy, I personally believe it may be even higher, have affairs with people who they meet at work. Now, the problem with Zoe and Berman is they got married very young. They're now 53 and 55. So they got married in their 20s. They might not have a prenup, which is, again, what the word is on the street, because they were young and they didn't think they were going to have anything. However, now it seems that Rachel has $30 million dollars and Roger has 5. Now, again, we don't know how they discussed things or talked about things, but again, in California, since it's community property and all of the money was earned subsequent to their marriage, it's probably all going to be considered both of theirs. But they're trying to do it in an amicable way and not have crazy tabloid stories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
And they have a kid together, so that would be nice if they could do it amicably. So Leanne Remini and Angelo Pagan, that has not been in the media as much as some other celebrity divorces, but what are the issues there? And what could
she was on TV, and she again really tried to do it very, very peacefully. They just said that they grew apart from each other. They also wanted to make many announcements because they wanted people to know that it's okay to grow apart and it's okay to get divorced, and you can still be friends and you could still be amicable and not have a number of tabloid issues.
Basically, the point there is if you are in the public eye, you can just get good PR people. You could have agreements up front. You can't control the tabloids, but you can at least control your message, which I think is really key, especially if you have kids. Now, I've been reading a lot about Billy Ray Cyrus and Fire Rose. Just by that name, there's got to be a whole lot of crazy there.
Right. Well, that is the new absolutely horror divorce, as you stated. So he met her first in 2010. She was probably a teenager, and she was at that time auditioning for Hannah Montana with his daughter, Miley Cyrus. And it seems that they really didn't get together until July of 2021. Now, Billy Cyrus is married to Trish Cyrus. They've been married for like 26 years. However, they filed divorce 3 times already. And Trish filed again during this whole public mess with Fire Rose. And she said, this time it's going to be permanent. So the first question is, was Billy Cyrus involved with Fire Rose when he was still married to Trish? From the tabloids and other information, it looks like he did. And what happened is that they started by making a song together. Then they made an album together. And then when this all happened in 2021, in like 6 months later, Trish filed for divorce. They were married since 1993. And it's, as I said, it's the 3rd time filing after reconciling in 2011 and 2013. But Trish says they haven't been living together for over 2 years, which makes sense with the whole Fire Rose incident. Then in September of 2022, Fire Rose shows off an engagement ring, and they say they've been dating for a while. Fire Rose loves to talk to people. She talks to people. She talks to Page 6. He posts all over Instagram. And at this point, Miley is very upset about this whole thing. She has no relationship. She hopes that her father is happy, but Miley was really much closer to her mom, Tish, throughout her divorce. In November of 2022, she and Billy released their second album. And then in August of 2023, they stepped out together on the red carpet at the ACM Honors at Nashville's Ryman Auditorium. They wore matching black outfits, with her also wearing a beautiful pink and silver bedazzled jacket for anybody who saw the show. And then in October of 2023, they get married. Miley, again, was not there, and Fire Rose thought it was the best celebration ever. And then in March, so then October 10th, November, December, January, February, March. 5 months later, they released their fourth song together. And allegedly, they were, very happy. Then in April, a month later, on their 6 month anniversary, Fire Rose puts on Instagram, life isn't always easy. So that gave everybody a hint that maybe there were problems. And she said, of course, but it sure helps when your husband's also your best friend. So we don't know what that meant. In May, Billy released another song, You Came Along, and he said he knows love is real. And the same day it was reported, he filed for divorce from Fire Rose. Now the information gets really crazy. First, he says irreconcilable differences is really no fault, and that's the way it is in most states. But he also had to add inappropriate marital conduct, whatever that means. Was she having an affair? Who knows? He additionally filed to annul their marriage. Now, annulment is different than divorce. Annulment is you make believe the court states that the marriage never happened, and there are only certain grounds upon which you can annul a marriage. One is fraud. And he said that she committed all different kinds of fraud. He also requested a temporary restraining order, which means that he got the police involved and the courts involved. He wanted to stop her from accessing her money. He claimed that she racked up $97,000 in his credit card between May 23rd and June 7th. Now, let's see, that's about 2 weeks. And she says, there's no problem here. That's what I've been doing during our entire marriage. So, was she really spending $50,000 a week? Maybe. Then in June, Fire Rose says that she was the victim of extreme verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse during her marriage. She said that Billy had persistent drug use, and she said that this is really the most horrible part is that he filed for divorce one day before she was scheduled to have a preventive double mastectomy.
Yikes.
So, based, I guess, on her family history or her genetics, she was going to have a double mastectomy, and he files the day before. I'm sorry, Nancy, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that the whole point of this is the more money and fame people have. I mean, I've seen a lot of people go through divorces with a lot less money involved that get pretty vitriolic. But when there are multi-millions of dollars involved and celebrity, people just get really cuckoo.
This is one of those horror stories.
It becomes entertainment in and of itself. And just moving to our last example, which, as you know, was one of my favorites because I am a lifelong bachelorette watcher.
Yes.
The Golden Bachelor, I knew from the beginning. To quote Scarface, I never liked that guy. And when Jerry Turner...
And you were correct. You were absolutely right.
And nobody will ever, ever, ever know the truth of what went on there, whether the entire thing was staged by producers and they said you're going to get married and there's going to be this ceremony on air and then you're going to get divorced and that's going to be great promotion for the show. Who knows? But yeah, that was a 3-monther. They never even lived together. But to me, it was just culturally to put that out there in the world and to say, we're going to have this great love story. And then 3 months later, they're going to split up. Like, how do these people even get to know each other? Like, how does that even happen?
You always thought that this was really a performance, not reality. And I think that you were right. Because, like you said, 3 months. And what Jerry Turner said is, Teresa and I have had a number of heart-to-heart conversations. Jerry said during a joint appearance with Teresa, and we've looked closely at our situation. They didn't do that before, Nancy. Our living situation, so forth. And we've come to the conclusion mutually it's probably time for us to dissolve our marriage. I mean, they discussed the whole issue of where they were going to live very openly on the show.
Yeah, I just think I'm reading a book now, which I love, called Cue the Sun, about the evolution of reality TV. And it just seems like the ante keeps getting upped in terms of drama involving marriage and kids. And it's just not setting great examples for the people who are watching that it's okay to have this super expensive wedding and then 3 months later as Gilda Radner used to say, never mind. It's one thing to be married for 20, 30 years and change priorities, change lifestyles, decide that you've grown apart. But really 3 months, and when you hear about people who are marrying 4 and 5 times, it's expensive, it's complicated, and it definitely takes its toll on the kids, the kids and really the friends, everybody in the family. I know that you have a lot of experience with high net worth divorces, but do you think it's a good idea even for younger people who are getting married who may not have a lot of assets yet to really think about prenups before they get married?
I think it's very important. First, as you mentioned, couples are getting married later in life. And, most men are over 30 and women, are approaching 30. And at that time, many of them have established careers. It's very important to discuss what I explained to couples. It's very important to discuss these things before you get married, to make sure that you have the same idea about how you're going to handle money and what's going to happen if we call it a termination event or in the event someone dies. And I think it's essential, and it just makes not only the drama go away, but it makes everything easy and not problematic.
And so let's say, for argument's sake, it doesn't work out and you're interviewing divorce attorneys. What are the kinds of things that you should be looking for when you're hiring a divorce attorney?
I think the most important thing you need to look for is whether or not the two of you have the same attitude towards the divorce. And what I mean is, divorce now involves two or three different things. It involves custody, which, if you have children under the age of 21, probably under the age of 15, involves parenting time and decision making, and it involves the distribution of the assets. And if in fact you have a prenup, you cannot discuss custody in New York, but you can discuss exactly how you're going to distribute all the assets. And again, it's very easy and it causes no issues if in fact you decide this beforehand. So you need a lawyer who, if that's the way you want to go forward, a lawyer who wants to work with the couple so that they get divorced without the drama and without great expense. There are certain lawyers that want to make it a war, and there are certain clients that want to make it a war. I was interviewing a client yesterday where her husband had an affair, and there's tens of millions of dollars involved, and that's all she's focused on. And unfortunately, in New York, the only issue would be whether or not that money was any money spent on the lover. Because if it was, she can recover half. Other than that, there's really no issue with regard to the rest, to the rest of the divorce. So you need a lawyer who is going to be in the same frame of mind as you. And again, that can go from mediation, where people actually talk to one person, and that's fabulous if in fact people can actually speak to each other. And I don't believe that it's good for high net worth people, because I believe that a high net worth person, whether it's the moneyed party or not, needs an advocate. Or you can go to lawyers who have the attitude that you want to work it out if you possibly can. If you can't, then you litigate. But if you want to work it out, you possibly can. I would say probably 90% of our cases settle. If I go to court, and I apologize, Nancy, I win. Because I have to tell you that I don't go to court often, and I've tried every single thing under the sun to try to settle. Reasonable access, reasonable decision making, tons of money and support. So that's really the most important thing. Also, I think you have to make sure that the lawyer has time to spend on your matter. If you have $500,000, it's different than if you have 25 million. There are different lawyers who handle different net worths. And you want someone who will consider you important. And the other thing is, you want someone who will give you access. If you call a lawyer, you want to be able to have the call returned. And
That's a great point.
you want attention when you need it. And those are my suggestions and ideas.
Thank you, Helene. And where can people find you? What is your website, email address? If people are interested in following you, what's the best way to find you?
Well, the best way to find me would be to just email me which would be Helene at brickhabitlaw.com. I don't know if you have my name down, but there's no hyphen in the actual email. So it's Helene at brickhabitlaw.com. Or you would like me to give my phone number?
No, that's okay. You'll find it. You'll find the email or her name in the show notes. So you can listen to this episode again if you would like, as well as any of our other episodes on Spotify, Apple, or if you'd like to see our lovely faces, YouTube. We have video content as well as audio content, and we're totally open to other topics to cover on Age Blind. Every month we're going to have a theme. So this month's has been fear and horror stories, and next month will be gratitude as we enter into November. But obviously you can listen to the episodes anytime, all year round. And if you'd like to be a guest, if you have a topic that you think our listeners would be interested in, just email me at Nancy A. Shenker, Shenker, at gmail.com with the subject line podcast guest. We finished 50 episodes as the Geezer Proofer and are just starting with Age Blind. We will be repeating some of our guests who were big hits the first go round and have topics that are of interest to people of all ages and stages. So remember, as you live your day-to-day work life and life, don't define people based on the date on their birth certificates, because we have more in common than we have that's different, and we're all going to age one day. So it's all just one big journey. So remember to be age blind, to listen up. Thank you again, Helene, for being a guest, and peace out.
Yes.